Hey, welcome to the space where we are live on the intersection of the people and the power. The podcast where we discuss current political events and topics about Chicago. Except the twist is the discussions are held between myself, a young person, and my guest, who is a person in a position of power. I'm your host, Caitlin Savato. Let's get started with the show. Today's topic is youth organizing in Chicago. Are young people really engaging in movement spaces like they used to? And what does it mean to be radicalized in this day and age? Our guest for today, Alycia Kamil, is a 23-year-old multi-disciplinary artist, educator, freedom fighter from the south side of Chicago. Alycia, how are you feeling today?
I'm great. Kate, you know I love you, so I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for our conversation today.
Of course. I know I had a little bio for you, but I want you to tell the audience who you are. I know spaces tend to tell us who we are instead of letting us speak for ourselves. So,
Yeah, thank you. So my name's Alycia. I'm a multidisciplinary artist, educator, freedom fighter. I just allow myself to do any and everything as long as it's with good intention and for the purpose of Black liberation. So whatever that looks like, from creating art, being in organizing spaces, everything I do for the people and for the advancement of people who look like me.
So you do a little bit of both?
Yes.
A little bit of
A
everything.
little bit of everything, yeah.
I know that's right. Do you feel like that's driven by your means of liberation, or do you feel like that's driven by something else?
I think it's a bit of both. I came into organizing spaces through creative writing. So a lot of my work as an artist, as an organizer, is directly influenced by each other. So a lot of it, writing or visual arts, is for myself, but I also think as somebody who was kind of like raised by organizing spaces or radical leaders, especially in the art field specifically, I think that has really moved how I wanted to create art and show up in spaces and the intention I put behind creating art. Because I think art, and we'll talk about this probably later, but I think art is a real necessary tool that everybody can relate to in movement spaces, and I think it's a big connecting tool. So I've always tried to use both in the same space.
Yes.
Yeah.
And our liberation is nothing without it at all.
Yes.
And I feel like the sense of self-expression and to be able to create things, and like we talk about it in movement spaces, and it's almost one of those things that like we talk about it and it's cool to mention once in a while, but we don't utilize it
as much as we could.
Yeah. And it almost becomes, I don't want to say harmful, but it puts us in that box that we try to get out of
Yes.
by organizing, then we get put in another box.
Yes.
I have some of your initiatives. I do want you to speak on those for yourself, but grocery drives, mutual aid funding proposals, and other art initiatives are just some of what your work has been driven by. Do you feel like your capacity for those things have shifted over time, and do you feel like your capacity in movement spaces has shifted over time as well?
Yeah, I would definitely say yes. Do you want me to speak on the initiatives first before?
Yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
So I started a grocery drive initiative during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic. At the time, I lived in Auburn Gresham, which had like the highest amount of COVID cases. We're also kind of positioned in a food desert as well. We don't have a lot of fresh markets. There's like a Pete's or there's like a Walmart neighborhood market. So there's not a lot of area. And a lot of people in the organization that I was with at the time were trying to figure out ways that we could address the needs. We were doing a lot of gun violence prevention and a lot of like outside work, but the lockdown brought us all inside, so we weren't doing that programming as much. And I just came up with the idea to raise money to provide groceries to, I think, the most marginalized groups of people, elderly, people who don't have access to cars to drive somewhere else. And then raised about like $10,000, brought my team back together, and we all did kind of like a mutual aid distribution. And that ended up turning into the mutual aid initiative for the organization that I was a part of. So that was something I did. And then during 2020, around the same time, I started my own collective called Undoing Our Erasure that I started off as a podcast. And as the time changed and the uprisings happened, I shifted it to doing political education workshops and then bringing in the mutual aid initiative back into the space. So I started it up again through Undoing Our Erasure, and then a program called Radical Essentials for the Youth, where I put together free book and art kits.
I remember that.
Yes, yeah. And I passed it out to ages of like 12 to 18, and then I made a separate series that was from like 18 to 24. So I would say capacity has definitely shifted. As I'm 23 and I think really aging out of like the youth category, I would say, working real jobs, 9 to 5 bills, all that stuff. I think capacity has shifted, and I think naturally, I think a lot about this quote by Miriam Kaba from We Do This to Refree Us, where she encourages people to kind of enact hope as a form of discipline, and that when we organize to understand we're on something called like an incidental timeline, so that we're put into this world completely just kind of put into spaces where systems of oppression have already been created, and we're kind of put now in this space to do our work in our timeline. And I think having that understanding makes me a little bit more okay with maybe my capacity changing. The older I get, kind of not wanting to. So I would say my capacity has shifted. But I think as you're kind of figuring out life and what time looks like for you, at whatever age you're at, you kind of are able to reassess the capacity and what stuff you're able to do.
And I think that's really important because we hear things on both sides of that spectrum a lot. We feel bad when we're not engaging in because we see folks either online, on social media, showing up or showing out or doing whatever. And I think as organizers, we guilt trip ourselves into feeling like we're not doing anything or not doing enough. And then the kind of flip side of it is we keep being told that liberation is going to take a lifetime or it won't happen in this lifetime. And
right.
So it's kind of hard to balance and just, I don't know, think about too. I feel like my engagement with organizing spaces, same as yours, like sometimes I'll lean into it a bit, but I've honestly found myself not engaging, not because of like my own capacity, but because I feel like there's a lack of movement, like there's stagnancy. And it's almost as if like our systems that we have created to fight a system has become systematic. And so it no longer works for the people because it's a system itself. And we don't talk about that a lot. I don't even want to like name drop, but those big orgs in Chicago and those folks who we see as like huge political powers have become political powers. They do rule and they do make decisions in the name of not even community anymore. I wouldn't even say that it's that anymore. I did want to go back and talk just a little bit about those grocery drives. When I heard of it, like, not even that it blew my mind, but it blew my mind to think that, like, the logistics and the idea and the thought and the processing, but also, like, the genius and the brilliance behind it. Because folks weren't thinking about feeding community, but also a lot of times what happens is orgs will have initiatives or they'll have intent, but it does not translate over to community. So the fact that you had an idea, a thought, a proposal that actually translated over to and impacted community was really essential and important. I just wanted to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you.
Of course. But also, I don't know if the audience caught on. We didn't mention the name of the org that you affiliated with. Not to be shady or nothing, but also I think that there's this really bad tendency in spaces where we give organizations the power and the credit for what we do as individuals. I remember when I think you and Jalen and Zaire were telling me, like, it was with one of those orgs. I don't want to name drop. But they were, like, asking me to do something, and I was like, oh, I was already invited, but, like, I'm not going to say that I'm with you because I'm showing up as my own person, as my own entity. How has your experience been with, like, showing up as an individual, as an organizer, as a freedom fighter?
Yeah, it's been newer because it's recent. I feel like I spent a lot of my like younger years attached to an organization or just like in spaces, and I would say it caused a lot of like identity issues. I would enter a lot of spaces prior to like my heavy organizing, And people, you know, like poetry spaces, for example, people be, oh, Alycia, like, I didn't even know that you were a poet. And I'm like, wow, like, I was a poet before anything else.
Right.
Like, and people associate with me, or like going to a space and if people know you're with an organization, I'll come completely just here to support. And then people sign you up to speak. And you're like, I didn't come here to do this.
Right.
So it's a lot. And I think no like onus on organizations. I think the work is a very overwhelming and encompassing work to do that people want to pull you in so much that we don't take moments to, I don't know, like just sit aside and who are we outside of our organizing work? You know, like what are our things that we care about? What media do we love? What artists do we love outside of organizing spaces? And I think so much of like what you're saying, so much of it is just we're here to work. Bad things happen, but it doesn't matter. We aren't going to process that. We're going to keep working, keep working, keep working, so much to the point where the individual self is lost. And even the creative things that maybe this person does do is now only used for organizing work. And I would say like writing for me got really ruined because I would come to organizing spaces. People would know I wrote. Now they know I'm an organizer. So I would come to places and people would be like, oh, and we're going to have, not asking me, we're going to have Alycia say a poem. I'm like, what? Like,
Not today.
Not today. I was not prepped for that. So even then, like everything that we do as individuals now is like for the movement. And I think naturally, like I mentioned earlier, it is like the intention. But when it's something that I can't do anything without it being for this organization, without it being for organizing work, you really just start to lose yourself in that space. So I would say now, not attached to an organization, but still doing organizing work in community, I would say it's not been healthier, but it's just been a different process because I haven't been in that space unless I was in an organization already. Yeah.
I went through the like similar experiences, but it was weird because it's a little bit more fresher because I was 13, now I'm 17.
Yeah.
But like being in a space and folks are like, or like even being at a press conference and it's like, okay, what's your org? What's your this? What's your, and you're immediately like attached to something.
Yeah.
And then I spit bars on the mic and it's like, now I don't even get my credit.
Right.
Like to this day, I think I had just did an interview with the Tribe. I hope I'm not. I had an interview with the Tribe. And they had reached out to me like, oh, like what's your as far as your title, like should we put cops out of nothing?
Right. It's like,
no,
this is Kate. That's it. Right.
Yeah, I was like youth organizer, Southside. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it's not even like the org's fault. It's just like
that's you.
Yes,
you got to this point obviously because of other people, but Kate got there because of you. You know what I mean? Like, and you would have been just as educated, just as knowledgeable with or without the organization that you were attached to or with. Yeah.
But also, I think, too, like, philosophy changes, thought processes change, and that's one thing that I've kind of been struggling with as far as, like, just coming off the election and some big wins in city council, I guess, but just being like, yeah, that sounds nice, or it sounds good, but the reality is this, or just feeling especially being in public school, or like one of the public schools that has been hit from underfunding and disinvestment. I think that we oftentimes down here feel the impacts of where they lack downtown. And so, and I'm not to say that like I'm almost putting myself on either side of the spectrum, but when we won the removal of cops out of CPS, it was great for like your Jones or your Westinghouse or your Kenwood. Right. But like down here now, it's like we have incidents and nobody knows what to do or where to go. And not to say like we built a system on relying on police.
Yep.
And we built a system where any safety reasons, anything like that. And so then we take it out and it's like we don't, not even that we took it out. Like, forget that. It's the fact that we didn't put anything in place.
Right, exactly.
Not a restorative justice, like, coordinating system. And I know, like, CTU fights for stuff like that. But I want to know, how do you feel about, like, some of those wins that I just named? And do you think that the intention from, I won't even, like, separate myself, the intention from, like, us as organizers transferred over into execution?
Yeah, I think so. You know, it's hard. Organizing at times could always seem like one big L, like every single thing you do, because sometimes you never see when you're in the moment, like I was on a lot of like the SROs at a CPS when I was in high school, and we didn't get that notification, and I'm 23. So it's like one of those things where you work on a movement and sometimes you're not there to see when it happens. And I think that also goes back into what I said earlier, you know, a lot of organizing work you do, you're not always doing it for yourself per se. Obviously, you're included depending on the time that you're organizing for, but sometimes you could do something and you don't see something till 5 years later and it's not for you. So I think any win in terms of a lot of the political losses and climate that I think Chicago goes through constantly is a good sign that change can happen, but I never view it as that's it. Yeah.
I think now it's more of like, where do we go from here? Especially post-presidential election. How are you feeling about that?
Honestly, it was such a chaos from the very beginning that it was hard to even feel it to be a real thing. I think I'm even still struggling with that this is the reality that we're living in right now. I feel like this whole election has just felt like a real big joke.
Yeah.
And especially, I'll never forget when it was announced that Kamala was going to be the one running, and everybody on Twitter was posting all these memes and these jokes, and like you're laughing, but you're like, oh, this is serious. Like, this is a real thing that's happening, and people are just making jokes out of it.
Yeah.
So honestly, ever since Joe dropped out of it and it was her, I was mentally checked out.
Yeah.
And I think regardless, and especially a lot of the conflict that's happening just right now, a lot of issues, and there was a lot of internal conflict that I was going through about like, what's the right decision? What should I feel about this? So I think post-election, I'm just kind of just, I hate to be that person that's like work has to happen regardless.
Yeah.
But that's just where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Especially with him being the one that did win. I think I was going to have the same comments regardless. That work was going to have to happen because even there was a lot of stuff that Kamala, she wasn't being pushed on that didn't reflect the majority. So regardless, there was going to be some work. So that's just kind of where I'm at. Like the work is just going to have to continue. It's going to have to be organizing probably 10 times harder because it's him that won.
Yes. Yeah. I love talking about the folks on Twitter, just because like it's fun to engage in and like joke about it until like now,
right?
Where it's like, oh no, and so all the like support towards Kamala or Trump or like whoever, like it didn't feel real. And one thing that I had said maybe like a day or two before the election was I was energized to see the results, not even because like everyone else's reason, but because I was ready to like see the reality. Like, am I existing in this bubble where algorithm is just showing me what I want to see?
Right.
Or do people actually, have we progressed as a nation?
It was a shock. It was a shock to see that he won. It was a shock to see that he won the electoral and the popular vote. It was and you always are like, you're okay, he won before, so it's not totally impossible that he'll win again. But I agree with you. I think social media, and I think this also kind of ties into like organizing spaces as well. We can sometimes live in a very like isolated, this is our world, everybody thinks like us because we think like this. And then you see stuff like this and you're reminded, and you're always reminded because obviously if you're organizing for a reason. And it's for people like Donald Trump and his supporters that you're doing a lot of this organizing work for. But it is a real shock to say, okay, it's 2024 and Donald Trump just won the election again. And like, what does this say about where we're at now? And just the, like you said, like looking at the results and, okay, he won the popular vote and the electoral vote.
All 7 battleground states.
Like,
with North Carolina, I was like, okay, y'all,
that
whatever.
That could be anyway, right.
And then Georgia turned red, and the areas by Atlanta turned red. I said, oh, it's time to go. I mean, like, it's just crazy. And I feel, I don't know, like, side eye. I don't even know how I feel about the results or, like, my attitude towards people. But like we were saying earlier, my immediate reaction was, okay, what are we doing now? And I'm not talking about protesting. I'm not talking about hitting the streets. And I barely even want to say it like on cameras, but at this point in our time, ain't no using text, ain't no messaging, and there's no like social media posting where we're gonna be at. Yeah. We're speaking in tongues, like at this point, going back to the ways of our ancestors, because it's almost like we are. I don't even want to say we, but I do want to say we. We've become so like. Do I want to say lazy or like so reliant on social media to show how we show up? Yeah. I think that we've become really reliant on other systems to dictate how we show up. And then that almost like backtracks, because if people think that they're showing up by reposting something or showing up to a protest, that's not working at all. No? Not even protesting anymore. Like during the uprisings.
Not the way it's done. That's what we'll say. Not the way it's being done. Is not. Because uprisings, the protesting, how it was done then was completely. And I think we talk about 2020 uprisings like it was this. And it was.
Because it really was.
I feel like that was I always talk about these like imaginary portals of where I feel like this was our opportunity to get somewhere. And I feel like 2020, the portal closed. Yeah. And we've been in this like stretch of trying to figure out what that looks like. But I feel like it was such a good, even though there were always errors in anything with something like that. But it's just for us to go from that to kind of like what you're saying. Everything is, and there's nothing wrong with digital organizing. Yeah. Because there's also a tool that social media plays. But I think, like you said, it's this heavy reliance on, oh, well, I tweeted this. I made this thread, so I'm an activist now. It's like, no.
But also I want to shed light on the fact that 2020 protests were efficient because we had Black women leading, Black femme people leading, Black transgender people leading.
Numbers all the time,
Black people were leading. And not even to say that, like, no, give credit where credit is due. No, give credit where credit is due. Yeah. Like, and now it's like that energy, and we've been taken advantage of. And so now every time that there's a problem or something needs fixing, oh, well, let's call on Alycia, let's call on Kate, let's call on... No, get off my phone. Right. Go call your mayor that you elected. Don't call me. Like, I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. Is there anything that you want to talk about? Feel like we haven't talked about?
No, I would just really say now I feel like when people talk about work, I am just interested, and I think these are more conversations that we need to stop having online. And I think really, really build community. I think that's a word that's thrown out, especially after 2020. It's like every flyer you see has the word community on it. It could be a party, and they're like, party for the community. Yeah, no. It's just not what that is. So I think in general, what work should look like is just more in-person spaces, or just separate from how big Twitter or Facebook or Instagram is. I think there's such a wide audience that if we aren't having those conversations internally to not have infighting, then on public, I always think about that. People who are on the same side in terms of like their radical beliefs, fighting in front of everybody, and like, why are we not having these conversations between each other, figuring out where our politics are, coming up with like a middle ground that makes everybody seem on one accord, and then we're presenting this to a larger group. So I just think I'm always interested in what people's definition of the work continues looks like in moments like this, because I feel like people's work and what that looks like varies all the time. Yeah. And I think that's where our disconnect always comes in, is that our work looks so different from somebody else based on how they're defining that.
So on that note, yes. Alycia, thank you so much for joining me today, discussing the work, the future of movement work. I really do appreciate you, yes, all you do, all your work. Do you have any projects or anything that I could shout out while you're here?
Yeah, definitely. If you're listening, just follow Undoing Our Erasure. There's definitely a lot of programming that I took a break on that I plan on bringing back within 2025. Undoing Our Erasure will be 4 by then. So definitely some exciting stuff in the future for that.
Make sure you all tune in to our next conversation with a very special guest. I'm so excited. That is a wrap. I'm Caitlin. This has been Live on the Intersection of the People and the Power. Thanks.